everybody, this is Dave with another model rocket build, and today I am building the Estes Spirit, and this is another one of their almost ready to fly or ARF series of models. And if you've built some of the other ones like the chiller that I've got a video on as well, you'll notice a lot of similarities here. This model goes together and is ready to fly in about an hour. Okay, and if this is your first model, you shouldn't have any problem with it at all. Even though it says skill level 2, with this series it simply means that there's a little bit of gluing involved. Now, as always, we'll want to check and make sure all the parts are here. So we've got our fin can in 2 parts, the motor retainer that will go onto the fin can, 3 fins, nose cone in 2 pieces as a base piece and the main nose cone, a nose weight, and this is just modeling clay, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit, a parachute, a reinforcing sticker. This actually goes on this part, so the body tube here is already partially assembled with the shock cord installed and the launch lug guide installed. Alright, and then we have some nice self-stick decals that you can put on when the whole thing's done. The instructions are straightforward, and most of what we have to do to build this is some gluing of the fin can and of the nose cone. And that's actually what takes the longest, is simply waiting for the fins to dry. So we'll start off with the fin can. You'll need either some plastic model cement or some super glue to put this together. And I'm using plastic model cement. And I would recommend that you put something down over your surface to protect it in case you slop some glue. And I'm just going to use the instructions here. Okay, so what we want to do is apply a thin layer of cement to all the contacting surfaces. Be careful around the threads. We don't want glue actually modifying the threads or blocking them. And you want to be careful not to use too much glue, because these surfaces on the outside are meant to be as is. You don't need to paint them, and so if you slop a little like I did there, it may show. Okay, and this is a very runny cement, which means it spreads well, but it also evaporates quickly, so you have to work fairly quickly on it. I'm going to go ahead and do the other side here. And the interior of this fin can is also the motor mount. And so these seams have to be pretty strong so that when you put a motor in it, it doesn't pop them apart. All right, so now very quickly we're going to match up the little pegs and the little holes, pop that together, and now just hold this for a good 60 seconds nice and tight so that it gets a good strong grip there. And then we'll set it aside and let it finish drying. Again, check to make sure you don't have anything on the threads, especially. If you do at this point, unless you have the really thick glue, you don't have to worry about it too much, but we don't want to prematurely put this on and get it stuck to the motor mount. So I waited 60 seconds, and then I simply wrapped a rubber band around this a few times so that it still has some pressure on it while it continues to dry. The next step, according to the instructions, is to put the fins in. I'm going to let the glue dry for a while longer, and so first thing before we do the fins, I'm going to go ahead and assemble the nose cone. Now, we've got this little bit of modeling clay that's used to add extra weight to the nose cone. And the reason they put this in here is because these series of models have the option of putting on an additional booster stage that runs on a D12.0 engine. So you can take your rocket here and turn it into a two-stage rocket. But when you add this, it changes the center of gravity and center of pressure so that the rocket is not very stable unless it has some extra weight in the nose. So if you absolutely positively know you're never going to add another stage to this rocket, you don't need the nose weight. I've run this through RockSim in a couple of different ways, and it's actually still very stable without the nose weight if you're using it as a single stage. Okay, now it doesn't add too much weight. This whole thing's only about 8 grams. And so if you think that sometime, if ever, you might want to run that other stage on there, just go ahead and put this in anyway. Okay, so just work it around in your fingers to get it softened up. The instructions show actually rolling it out into a big worm. You don't need that. What I would recommend is kind of making it into a cone shape here. Okay, and then all we need to do is drop this down inside. And even if it landed cone side up, that's alright. And what you want here is a dowel or a long tool or something like that. And what we're going to do is just tamp this down in so that it's nice and solidly put up against the nose. It's kind of narrow, it's just making holes in it. And sometimes you can use like the handle of your hobby knife if you have one. This nose cone is really long though, and I'm about to lose the knife. Okay, so you may need something a little bit longer to get in there. I've actually got it tamped down. It just has holes in it. It looks weird. Oh, can you see that in there? Okay, so once that's in, now you just need to glue on this base. And here I would not recommend using this runny type of model cement. Instead, use either the tube type model cement or the gel type of super glue, cyanoacrylate glue. And what we're going to do is simply run a bead of glue around just the inside of this. And you always want to do this to the nose cone. You don't want to apply the glue to the base. And the reason for that is that any excess glue will get shoved forward if we do it this way. If I apply the glue here and I put this in, the excess glue is going to end up around this edge, and we don't want it there. So now I'm just going to slide this in and turn it a little bit as I do to spread the glue evenly. Now I can just set this aside to let that glue dry as well. Alright, now we'll come back to our fin can here. Okay, it's still a little bit soft, and if you can kind of see there, you can still see light through the crack here, which means it is not completely sealed itself to the other side. And what I'm going to do then is just apply a little bit more glue to the inside of that so we can do a better job of sealing that seam. Now this part of the fin can will actually be up inside the body tube, and that'll help reinforce it as well. But I've had a lot of rockets with this style of fin can that as soon as you put an engine in it, just pops it right open. So you want to get this as strong as you can get it, but at the same time you don't want a lot of glue oozing out to the outside of it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and let that dry some more. Okay, so we can kind of go into the middle steps here. So this square looks like it's just clear plastic. This is actually another self-adhesive decal It's not decorative, it's structural. And this is going to fit across the middle of the launch lug assembly here and reinforce it. So just peel this off. And first just center it lightly. Okay, and try not to get down on the body tube at this point. What we want to do is first make sure it's got a good seal against that launch assembly. And what I want to do now is stick it first to the side edge of this before it hits the body tube. If I try and just fold it directly onto the body tube, I'll have a big air gap here on either side, and it's not going to be as strong. It's also going to look kind of yucky that way. So I'm going to take my fingernail here and crease this down along the side of the launch lug assembly. Okay, I'm going to do this on both sides. Just take a fingernail in here. And then I'm going to smooth this out onto the body tube. Okay, just like that. As I said, the shock cord here is already pre-mounted. It's actually mounted to the underside of this, and this is all glued together at the factory. Now you can see here a little bit of glue oozing out here and here. I wouldn't worry about it. Sometimes though you get little strings of glue that came off over here during the assembly. Those just take a thumbnail and pinch off and get them out of the way. While we're still waiting for our glue to dry on the fin can, we can go ahead and assemble the parachute. This is a nice 15-inch plastic parachute here. And the hard work's already been done, so all the shroud lines are already attached to this. And so you just need to separate them out and then draw them into loops like this. And what I do generally is just grab a hold of the very center of the canopy here and then pull taut, and that should give you fairly even lengths in a loop around your finger. Now, according to the instructions, they simply put this loop through the eye of the nose cone here, like this. Gotta get up all the loops. There we go. And you always want to be hanging on one end to the other here so that your lengths don't change. Okay, and then they show looping the parachute through this loop. The other way you can do it is you loop the nose cone through this loop, and either way you're going to end up with a knot down here, and you just pull it tight. Now that you've seen that, I'm going to show you a different way. Okay, I prefer to be able to remove my parachutes quickly and change them out between models when I have to. And so now I'm going to go ahead and recheck my shroud lines here again. Got a little bit of tangling going on. There we go. Okay, so make sure I've got them even once more. And now instead of running them through the nose cone, I'm going to run it through a snap swivel. And you can get these in the fishing department of your local department store or sporting goods store. The size of the swivel doesn't really matter. These are rated for much, much heavier use than what the Rocket's going to put it through. But the key thing is to make sure the snap end of it is large enough that it'll fit over the eye loop here of your nose cone. And so this depends a lot on which model you're doing. And now I'm going to do this the same way that we would do it on a nose cone. We just use the eyelet of the swivel here. And we're going to pass all three loops through that again. Okay, so make sure you've got a loop here. And then you're going to take the entire swivel, pass it through, and then just help that loop come down. and pull it taut. And that gives you a really nice knot right there. Okay, and then when we're ready to launch, we simply clip this on and it's ready to go. Now the shock cord still has to be attached to this, but this gives you a few options and a few benefits to it. It does add like about a gram of weight, if that. But having this swivel here helps prevent your parachute lines from getting tangled. Because no matter how carefully you get this to go on there, inevitably one side's just a little bit higher or lower than the other, and your parachute will start to spin. And so this way it spins across the swivel instead of tangling up all of the shroud lines. This also gives you the option of storing your parachute separate from the rocket. Okay. A lot of people just, when they're storing their rockets, they just kind of wad up the chute, fold it up quick, and stuff it in, which is fine. But over time, it starts to retain that squished shape, and when you go to launch it, then it comes out and it won't open fully, especially if it's cold outside. Okay, or maybe you're launching on a really windy day, and this parachute's going to keep it in the air too long, and you might blow it over way outside of your recovery field. And you want this to come down a little faster. So you could easily swap this out, put in a smaller parachute, like a 12-inch parachute, fly it on that for the day, and then come back and put your regular parachute on when it's a calmer day. So this gives you a lot more options with just a little bit more expense. Okay? Either way you want to do it is fine. And the rocket will fly fine with either type of parachute attachment. Okay, now I want to make sure I don't accidentally pop this loose. So I'm going to go ahead now and attach the shock cord. And here you're just going to run it through and then tie a couple of half hitches, or just a double knot. And go ahead and stretch it each time you put one of those knots on there. Pull on both sides. Okay. And you do want to leave a little bit of extra material here on this side of the knot, so that over time, as this stretches and pulls, if you have the end cut right next to the knot, it may actually end up pulling through. So leave about 1/2 centimeter to 1 centimeter of material there. I'm going to cut that off just a little bit so it doesn't accidentally get caught beside the shoulder of the nose cone. Okay, so something like that is good. And then this whole thing simply fits down into the body tube. Okay, and that goes in like this. That is a really loose nose cone. So before you launch, you're going to want to take a little bit of masking tape and wrap it around the base of the nose cone here. And depending on how loose it is, you may need a full circumference, you might need half. Alright, well, what you want is to have it tight enough that it won't shake loose, but not so tight that it can't come loose during launch. So in my case here, about 3/4 of a circumference. I had a little bit folded under there, which is probably making it too thick. Let's try this again. That feels good. Okay? Yep, and it's not shaking itself loose. Okay, so my fin can should be dry enough to work with now. And I'm just going to run my fingers over the threads here quickly, make sure there's nothing gooey on there. Now I'm going to go ahead and put the retainer on here for a little bit just to make sure it's fitting correctly. I'll have to take it back off again here to put the fins on. Go ahead and take off my rubber band here. Okay, and now all we're going to do is glue and slide each of these fins in. Now I would recommend you dry fit this first so you know how they go in, and make sure that there's nothing that's going to hang up or catch with them. Like this. Okay, no problems there. Occasionally you may see what's called flash, which is just a little bit of excess plastic from the molds. These kits, they seem to do a pretty good job of catching that before they ship out. Okay, so now we'll just take these off and glue them back on again. Okay, so I just glued one in here and continue with the other. Use plastic model cement or super glue for this, and we're gluing along the bottom of the base and along the sides here. The bottom of the fin tab, the thick spots up here, don't actually come into contact with anything on the fin can. So you just put a nice even coat there. Make sure the threaded end's facing back, and you just pop these in and quickly push them forward. And you want to do it all in one quick motion so they don't get stuck halfway up. Okay, and then the last one goes on the same way. Okay, so our fins are on, and the last thing to do is to mount this to the body tube. Okay, so this is just dry fit. I don't have any glue on the fin can yet. So this is just going to slide in here, and you can put this in any orientation you want, but you need to make sure that the fins are on either side of the launch lug assembly here. So you want that centered between any two of your fins. And it doesn't matter which two. That's completely up to your own preferences. In my case, I'm going to do it between the two red ones. Okay, now here we're having to glue plastic to paper or cardboard. The best thing for this is the thick gel type of super glue. The next best thing is the tube type plastic cement, not the runny stuff like I've been using here, but the thicker stuff. And kind of like what we did on the nose cone, we're going to apply a bead of glue just on the inside. And again, the inner part of the fin can there will push the excess glue forward so that we don't have glue coming out of the seam. Okay, and now I'm just going to once again put this in, kind of rotate it back and forth to spread the glue, and then check my alignment. Okay. And now all I have to do is put my retainer on here. Make sure it doesn't move. Recheck the alignment. Okay, and structurally this is done. Okay. Now before launching this, I would recommend waiting at least 30 minutes to let all of your glue joints get fully set. They should be fine by then. So, you know, figure on it takes about half an hour to build this, half an hour to let everything dry. You're launching within an hour of opening up the kit. Pretty cool. Okay, now the last part will be to put on the stickers here, and you can refer to the box as to the recommended way, but of course this is your rocket. You can put these stickers on any way you want. You can paint this if you want to, although the beauty of this one is it's all pre-colored. There's no painting required, but there's no reason you couldn't. Okay, so use your own aesthetic, your own artistic talents and preferences. Hope this went well for you, and I hope you have a good launch. As an epilogue to this video, I want to show you how you can make this into a two-stage rocket. Okay, so if you want to fly this two-stage, you're going to put whatever motor that you're normally put in the upper stage in, And I would recommend using one that has a longer delay charge on it, because this is going to be moving pretty quick when it gets up there, and it's going to coast for a long time. So this is an old engine casing I'm using for an example. This is a B44. I would actually suggest, if you're going to do this, is use the B46, because it'll have a longer coasting time. But whatever your engine is here, you're going to put this in like it would be normally, all right, with the nozzle sticking out. But instead of putting the engine retainer on, you're going to use the adapter here from the booster kit. This is the BT55 booster kit. It's just called a Booster 55 if you go to look for it in the catalog. And this ring here replaces the retaining ring from the model. And so it's going to screw on this way. And you just tighten that down snugly. And then this piece here will contain the D-sized booster motor. And that's going to be a D12-0. Okay. So this says a D12-3 as I don't have a spent casing of a 0 at the moment. All right, but it does have to be a D12-0. That will go in here with its own engine retainer. And then this whole piece slides on over the adapter, just like this. Okay. Now, even though the rocket itself has 3 fins and the booster has 4 fins, it doesn't make any difference. Just make sure that there's clearance along the line of the launch lug, because the rod's going to go all the way down here. Now again, if you're going to use this booster, you have to have put the nose weight up here. Otherwise, you may end up with an unstable rocket that could go wildly in any direction and could be a potential danger, if not to people, then to the rocket itself. This also only works with black powder engines. So the Estes engines that you probably buy wherever you bought the rocket, those are the ones to use. Composite engines like those made by Quest or Aerotech cannot use this type of staging. Okay, if you use this type of staging with a composite motor, either they're not going to ignite properly on the second stage. Okay, so if you get to looking at this and say, you know, I want my rocket to go even higher, definitely check this out. I have another video on the assembly of this booster module, and Estes makes these for both BT55 based rockets like this one and BT60 rockets that are going to be a little bit bigger in diameter than this. Okay, have fun.